Namaskar. We are just 1 week away from Diwali. As you spend time cleaning and lighting up your home, take a moment to focus on the transformation within. Get your copy of the Bhagavad Gita commentary and books by Jayaji at half the price by 23rd October. This Diwali, gift a book or a pen drive to your loved ones. Place your order at vedantavision.org and have it delivered directly to your loved ones anywhere in India. For overseas seekers, enjoy the Bhagavad Gita commentary online and help illumine minds across the world. We wish you and your loved ones a bright and joyful Diwali. We will not have the weekly online class next Saturday, 18th October. Now, let us continue with chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita.
ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Any questions? Last time we finished the 12 yajnas. Are there any questions about this? So basically the 12 yajnas are about converting all our activities to worship. And it's a brilliant piece of research that they did and a prescription that they gave us, because the principle is you become whatever you think. Now what are we thinking of? Body. Body and all the demands of the body. So you go out into the world to fulfill these demands. Then we think of the mind. Again we go out into the world to get emotions from the mind, to feed the demands. Similarly, intellect. But what we need to think of is Atman. We are not thinking. And at best, what do? A person does a prayer once a day, either in the morning or in the evening, or maybe both, morning and evening. Then once a week maybe goes to the temple, church or mosque. Once a year goes on pilgrimage. That is not enough. Because what is required is constant, consistent, unending thinking of Atman. Now that is not possible, because you will say you have your job to do, you have to take care of the family, you have so many other obligations. So this way what they've done is they've gone and identified wherever our mind goes and helped to convert that to worship. So they began with the 3 transactions: receipt of stimuli from the world, reaction at the level of the mind and intellect, and response back into the world. These 3 they further divided into 12 transactions, 12 things that we do. Okay? And in each they said yajna is going on, means worship is going. So they started with mere perception. When you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, what happens? Our attention goes out into the world, to the source of the stimulus. So what is being said? What is it that I am hearing, tasting, touching, etc.? Instead, he's saying, every time there is a sense perception, think, what is it that makes me perceive? So, there is worship. Then comes sense control. Every time you control your hearing, seeing, so on and so forth, worship is going on. But each of these you have to exercise independently. You may control your seeing. Maybe you have been binge watching movies or TV serials and you say, no, I'm going to stop it. But then you could be listening to gossip. You could be violating sense control at other levels. Then the next one comes where, because you want to evolve spiritually, because you want to become a better person or get closer to God, whatever be your concept, you control your senses because you don't want to waste your energies doing that. So, that's the next yajna. Like this, he goes on. Now, having perceived, once perception is over, receipt of stimuli, what is the next step? Reaction and response. So, 4 ways of giving. Dravya yajna, tapo yajna, yoga yajna and swadhyaya jnana yajna. So, the interesting thing is the first 2, when you give wealth or you give your physical effort, your resources go down and the recipient's resources go up, are enhanced. But in the next 2, there is no depletion. The more love you give, the more you have. The more knowledge you share, the more you know. We were just discussing. So it's a wonderful thing, giving. And the last is Swadhyaya Jnana Yajna. When you grow spiritually, you're giving 100%, you're giving everything. Then, Prana and Apana. This is the most amazing thing. Every time you take a breath, just you're sitting. Maybe you're sitting in a car or a train or a bus or just sitting at home by yourself. We are constantly looking for entertainment. If nothing else, you scroll. If nothing else, you're constantly looking at the phone to see whether somebody is messaging you or not, or whether you're getting an email or not. Just sit quietly. Try that this evening when you go home. Just take a breath. Not a deep breath, not a strained breath, just normal breathing. Yajna is going on. Worship is going on. So in yajna, worship, what is it? It consists of 2 transactions. One is your offering, the other is kindling. So when you take in a breath, intake, that is completed, the exhalation is kindled. And when the exhalation is completed, inhalation is kindled. And you don't need to do anything, just sit there. Breathing is automatic. Think of Atman. This is the most fantastic thing. And if you do this, you actually put it in practice, you'll realize that you're free from that impulse to do things. That restlessness of the mind that makes you get up, go to the kitchen, come back, again get up, go somewhere else, come back. That restlessness goes away. Sit quietly by yourself. Practice it. Because the more you learn to just sit. See, I'm not saying lazy sitting or lying down. This is a very active thing. And you'll find that you become calmer, your mind is calmer. You become more cheerful. There are less things to stress over, less things to worry about, less things to get irritated about. And you're in an oasis of peace and tranquility. Just breathing. Then comes pranayam, where you control the inhalation and the exhalation. When you do that, you generate inner strength. And this inner strength, then you plow back into the world as action. This completes the whole thing. So, whatever it is that you do, whether you're taking in something, whether you're taking a breath, whether you're giving, you're acting, or you're not doing anything, every action of yours or inaction, whatever it is, throughout your life, you can be worshipped. You don't need a lamp to light, you don't need a murti, you don't need a temple, you don't need anything. And with the festivities, the festive season round the corner, Dasra, Diwali, hectic activity, too much traffic, too many things happening, practice it. Fireworks, gifting, all sorts of things are happening. Just sit quietly by yourself. Then you know what? You will be celebrating Diwali 100% without doing anything. What are you doing? Worship. What are you doing? Aligning with Atman. This is the meaning of the festivities, whichever festivity. Whether it is Navratri, Dashera, Ganesh Chaturthi, Diwali, the whole lot. It's brilliant. So what we must do is, we all distributed that sheet, that circular thing. Start with the first, or start with whatever appeals to you, and put it into practice. I'm seeing. Let me shift from what I'm seeing to what makes me see. So, one by one as you go, you'll find that it's much easier for you to take your thoughts back from the world and your activities and your distractions and whatever it is that you're engaged in to that core within. And once you're centered, you'll never be thrown off balance. Like a gymnast or a dancer, all these people who perform various actions. You'll find a gymnast does so many things, but she's never off balance, she never falls. Why? Her center of gravity is always within her base. Remember physics? School physics. If your center of gravity goes off the base, then you fall. And that's a skill that a dancer learns, a gymnast learns. All the people who are engaged in hectic activity, they are never thrown off balance. Similarly, internally, mentally, if your center falls within your base, mental base, nothing in the world can shake you. Because you're able to analyze and arrive at the solution within yourself. And we'll see now as we go along. So, next verse, 31.
यज्ञशिष्टामृतभुजः यान्ति ब्रह्म सनातनम् नायं लोकोऽस्त्ययज्ञस्य कुतोऽन्यः कुरु सत्तमा.
Those who eat the nectarine remnant of yajna, sacrifice, go to the eternal Brahman. this world is not for the non-performer of yajna, how then another, O Kuru Sattama, best of the Kurus? With this verse, we enter the second last topic of this chapter. All yajnas culminate in wisdom. So, verses 31 to 37. Now, he's talking of the result of the result of yajna. So he's saying, those who eat the nectarine remnant of yajna means the result of yajna. What is the result of yajna? Number one, you enjoy life. The action itself becomes exhilarating, exciting. Why? Why? Because you're not thinking of yourself. It is thought of self that is depressing. You should observe. As long as you're focusing on activity, you're focusing on your work, you're doing something meaningful, you're not depressed. You go home and then think, after I retire, what will happen to me? What will happen to me? Depressed, straight. I invested this money somewhere. I don't know what has happened to it. Depressed. I invited somebody for Dasra to have lunch with me. If the person doesn't come, what will happen to me? I'll be alone, depressed. Huh? If nothing else, you think, I'm losing hair, I'm becoming bald, depressed. To the extent you're thinking of something, anything beyond yourself, life is intoxicating. So you must observe within yourself. It's no use just listening and going back to your life as it was. Think. And it's not just that you're happy, you become efficient. Why? Mind is calm. You're not stressed out, the mind is calm, you become creative. You think of solutions. You think of new things to do. And that keeps you enthusiastic. It could be just trying out a new recipe. It could be you have a difficult customer and you think, maybe this is how I can deal with the person. It could be your own child is, I don't know, not studying. Instead of sitting there and complaining and nagging the child, and like someone said the other day, that daughter who's barely 15 years old, she was sitting there at the dining table with the whole family and saying, my friend wants me to be her bridesmaid when she gets married. 15-year-old. The mother got so mad with her because her exams are coming up, or exam just got over, and she did not do well in chemistry. So the mother is telling her, if I were you, I wouldn't bother about bridesmaid. I would bother about chemistry, passing the next test in chemistry. So it was so funny. See, children by nature are happy, cheerful, joyous. You can't pin them down to chemistry or physics or anything. She doesn't want to think of this. She wants to think of happy, joyous occasions. So she's thinking of bridesmaid at the age of 15. This is it. How do you get yourself to enjoy like the child? Think. There's so much pressure on children. Do your chemistry, do your math, do this, do that. Child just refuses to identify with any of the problems. The child may have failed in every subject. And the parent is worried, losing sleep. Child happy. Why? No thought of self. The moment you think of self, you're gone. And number two, you evolve, because when your attention is fixed on a higher goal or a higher cause, something beyond yourself, to that extent, you're not thinking of yourself. So, what happens? Your desires wane. And over time, you realize, earlier I was interested in shopping and holidaying and eating out and so many things, and now it's not there. So it's not that only after realization life becomes enjoyable. The journey itself is so thrilling. The problem is, why are we not experiencing it? Because only in the beginning it is a little painful. And that too because our lifestyle is also convoluted. You ask someone to wake up early, but once you get into the habit of waking up early, it is such a joy. You wake up when it's dark outside and the whole world is fast asleep. And then slowly, as the dawn approaches, the first rays of light appear, the birds come alive, insects come alive. And just to watch that transition is so nice. So, for a few moments of pain, you're giving up a lifetime of happiness. Very sad. Therefore, now is the time when the festivities are around the corner and we have this Diwali scheme, which is you'll get virtually everything that we have to offer at half price, 50% discount. See, we're not talking, this is not a commercial thing, please. It's not like you buy 2 pairs of shoes, you get one free. It's not like that. It is encouraging people to give themselves a chance to study the Bhagavad Gita. So we have 5 books. We have the entire Bhagavad Gita on a pen drive. We have various other pen drives of the Bhagavad Gita itself. Take something for yourself. And it's not just about taking. Start studying. When? Not next week. Not after Diwali. Tomorrow morning. You take it today and start. And when you give gifts, we all give sweets, we give nuts, we give all kinds of things. Along with that, give one book. It is when you start sharing your good fortune with others that it really benefits you. And the Bhagavad Gita itself says that. Even a person who shares this knowledge, who talks about it to others, who enables somebody else to gain the knowledge, that person also helps. Quite a few years ago, there was a multinational bank that took 500 books from us to give as a gift to their clients. And recently I met someone who got that gift and they had asked me to sign. So every one of those 500 books I had signed. And he told me, because I got it from the bank, I read it. Because I was thinking, how come a company that deals with money is actually giving a book on spirituality? So because of that, he read it and he said he's benefited from it. There are people I meet who have watched lectures on Astha, which is like 25 years back it stopped. And they still remember. So it has an impact. It's not about remembering, it's about actually integrating it into your life. So give yourself a chance. It's not And that's why we're giving it at half price, so that you can't say it's expensive. Next verse, 32.
एवं बहुविधा यज्ञाः वितता ब्रह्मणो मुखे कर्मजान् विद्धितान् सर्वान् एवं ज्ञात्वा विमोक्ष्यसे.
Thus, various sacrifices are strewn before Brahman. Know them all to be born of yajna, action. Having known thus, you shall be liberated. So, it is not what he is saying is, it is not just these 12 yajnas that he is enumerated that help us. Every perception, every emotion that flits through your mind, every thought that you entertain, all of life's activities can be worship provided you have the right attitude. You have the right way of looking at things. So, Vitata Brahmano Mukhe means are strewn before Brahman. What he's trying to suggest is that Brahman is not participating in any of this. God is not a party to all of this. See, many people say, or you should be saying, if God created the world, then what a horrible world He's created. Huh? There is war everywhere. You just have to watch the news. You have to listen to someone who's talking about world events that are taking place, and you wonder, what a mad world it is. And this is created by God? No. God has nothing to do with it. God is merely the enabler, that which gives vitality to our body, mind and intellect. It is up to us. We have created this world. Isn't it? So, all you have to do is separate action from Brahman. How do you do that? You don't know Brahman, but you know action. So get to the bottom of action, what happens? You've got Brahman. It's like this. In a basket, there are red and blue marbles. And there is a colorblind person. It is said that colorblind people can't see blue, but they can see red. So you tell the colorblind person, remove all the red marbles, then what happens? What is left behind is blue. So he gets blue without knowing. Similarly, the world is a mix of matter and spirit, action and Brahman. You don't know Brahman, but you know action. Get to the bottom of it. Voila, you got Brahman. So, know them all to be born of action. Wherever, yeah.
Sometimes we are not able to go to that, what was the context of action. We are not able to go to that level.
Yes, what she is saying is, we may not be able to trace it back right to Vasana level, because you don't know Vasana. But at least you can say, and this is what we're talking about, when you see the world around us, people around us, there are all kinds of people, right? There is one person who is very nice, there is a person who is absolutely dumb, third person is positively vicious, wants to bring about your destruction. There are brilliant people, there are not so intelligent people, there are rich people, there are poor people, there are refined people. What superb emotions, thoughts they have. It moves you to see such refinement. And then there are such gross people. If you stand apart from this and just understand what is happening, nature functions. A vicious person will function in a vicious way, a nice person will function in a nice way. What have I got to do with it? Why are you suffering for someone else's fault? Isn't that what happens? You see somebody wishes a simple thing while going back home, you see another driver who's driving in the most atrocious manner. You get angry. Why are you getting angry? Here's a person who has no consideration for anybody else. Here's a person who's just a bad driver, hasn't learned driving properly. Understand. When you understand, that's when you've understood action.
What if that vicious person is trying to harm you personally?
Yes,
Or get your property?
yes.
Those kind of
So, that is a rare occasion where someone wishes is trying to get the better of you. Then you use your intellect to not only protect yourself, but to hit at the person and hit where it really hurts. So you have to figure things out. In the Mahabharata, that's exactly what happened. Duryodhan was the vicious person who took away everything from the Pandavas. But the Pandavas were totally useless because they were passive, no intellect. So they got taken for a ride. They lost their kingdom, they lost everything, including the wife. Had it not been for Krishna, they would have lost. What did Krishna do? Intellect. Revived the intellect, resurrected the intellect, resurrected the personality of whom? Just one person, Arjuna. And the entire thing shifted. So that is it. You can't just say I'm good and not use the intellect, because our constitution is such that we have a body, mind, and intellect. Other animals don't have intellect. So what happens? God protects them. Yeah? Elephants, leopards, peacocks don't need to figure things out by themselves. Just one second. You and I have an intellect. If you don't use the intellect, even if you're good, you'll suffer. Okay? Yeah. 12 yajnas. Sorry? You were not there last time? I just repeated, and you must have come late. So she'll just give it to you. So, your answer, both of you got your answer. So, when you understand, he says, I have nothing to do with them, which means objectivity. I have nothing to do means you should tell yourself, I have nothing to do with them, I am Atman. Understand that nature functions. So, real enjoyment lies in objectivity. Like, what is the secret to enjoying a movie? You go to a tragic movie and you enjoy it. And earlier, Bollywood movies were all tragic. So people would go to the movie with handkerchiefs, come out wet, eyes swollen, and first thing they would say is, I want to see this movie again. And do what? Cry again. What is the secret of enjoyment? Because you know that you are apart from it. You're not in it. You're different from it. So even though you identify with the tragedy that's going on there and you may cry, but you still enjoy it. This is the secret of enjoyment. So even in real life, when tragic events happen, you can still be unaffected. How? Just understand it will pass. Everything passes. The best and worst passes. But at that time, if you remember that it's a movie that's going on, everyone's nature is functioning. All I have to do is maintain my balance and keep my distance. That's it. So absolute objectivity, 100% objectivity is Atman, Brahman. We all are varying degrees. But we haven't even reached pass marks. What are pass marks? 35%. I'm asking the teacher here. 35% also we haven't reached. We're all somewhere 12, 15, 20. That is why we're suffering. So, when you understand that the body and its functions, the mind and its emotions, the intellect and its thinking, all that is going on, but that beyond it all, there is something. And that something is me, the real me. So let's get at it. And believe me, just the search for it, the journey, the striving for it, that itself is so enjoyable. Yeah. And you will get involved, you will get entangled, you will suffer. Keep pulling back. It's a constant effort. Whatever happens in life, keep pulling back. Say, this is not, that's why they keep saying, neti, neti. In the past, there was no teaching. The guru wouldn't teach. The guru would simply say, the student would reach a conclusion and go to the guru and say, is this it? Neti, neti. It means not this. Whatever you understand, not this. Then, in the end, when the disciple reached realization, then he went back and declared to the guru, I've got it now. Aham Brahmasmi. And it's all your prasad, Guruji. That is the ultimate. So, we'll get there sometime. Someday we'll get there. But keep pulling back. Don't get involved in anything. Don't sit there, we all believe happiness lies in something out there.
So if we really understand Aham Brahmasmi, then can we say that law of karma doesn't exist?
Yes, once you reach Brahman, there is no law of karma. But don't jump to conclusions. Before you reach there, law of karma applies.
Thought of self leads to sadness and non-negative emotions. So instead of waiting to go there is sadness, how do you become more self-aware and like to say nip it in the bud? So how do you do that in the earlier stage?
Constantly identify with something beyond, with a cause, with see, all the exceptional people in the world have identified with a cause, something beyond themselves. It could be, a cause doesn't mean that, God realization, not necessarily. That is, of course, the best. But a musician identifies with music, then nothing else affects him. Like Ustad Bismillah Khan was a happy person. Anytime you looked at him, he had a smile on his face. And what did he have? Materially, he didn't have anything. He never felt jealous about other musicians. He always had that camaraderie. The way he spoke about Vilayat Khan, as if he was his brother. So, that alignment with anything other than yourself. Sports persons. A true sports person never feels competitive with others. Like, see, Nadal and Federer, what a wonderful relationship they have. One declared his retirement, the other started crying. They were both crying. It's very nice to see that. So, what is the secret behind this? Not thinking of themselves. They were both dedicated to tennis. So then you don't view another person as a competitor, you view him as a partner. And he excels, tennis excels, so I celebrate. That's the feeling you must have. And if in any group, in any organization, if you are able to bring about this togetherness, then you'll achieve wonders. Because so much of our effort and time and energy is wasted in negativity, in feeling jealous of others. So, even in the spiritual field, what percentage of society is spiritual? Huh? What do you think? What percentage? 1. Okay? So, all the spiritual people are competing to get that 1%. How about all of us together trying to get 99%? No single person or individual or institution can achieve it. That is what happens when Swami Ramatirtha went to America to give lectures. One guy got up and said, "Who the hell are you? Where have you come from? Half the world follows Islam, the other half follows Christianity. Nobody's heard of you." So he said, "Yes, sir. But there's one small correction. Half the religious people are following Islam and half the religious people are following Christianity. But if you go by majority are following the devil. So you mean we should follow the devil? Are you following majority?" So it's like that. And then you will never feel lonely, you won't feel left out, you won't feel neglected, you won't feel that you've got a raw deal, nothing. Because you've identified with the totality. So you are happy, you become successful because all your energies are then on positive things. And you evolve spiritually. So, how to practice this objectivity? This is a fascinating subject. All you have to do is first observe external objects, inert objects. You enter a room, even the most luxurious place, somewhere a painting will be tilted, just slightly crooked, or something. Like, I travel and I go to the same place, but I go once a year. And you'll be amazed that slightly off-center painting will remain like that for years together. So every year I go there and straight see same position the painting. Or there are some homes that I go to are immaculate. Not one thing is out of place. Hats off to them. I don't know how they manage that. Such a beauty. And it's not cluttered, not too many things. Simple, but everything you could want is there in the house. You want scissors, they're there. You want a kettle to warm water, it's there. Everything is there, but simple. No strange things jutting out of walls, nothing. You admire that. You must observe. This is an object. Then observe people's emotions. Some people are so positive, so warm, so affectionate, so full of fun and laughter. Others are like stressed out. You enter the house, you feel electricity. Too much stress. There are people in whose homes servants last till they die almost. And then there are homes, where is your cook? Gone. Second one come. 6 months, gone. Third one come. Why? And you can easily find fault with people. So you observe. Don't pass judgment. Just observe. Then within yourself. Okay, other people's ideas, as people clear, confused, whatever. Then yourself, your physical condition you must be aware of. That I'm overweight, I need to lose weight, I need to be fit, I need to be healthy. Observe. You can't, the most overweight person thinks she's pretty. Why? Because there's no observation. Observe your emotions. Why are you negative? Why do you get irritated with people? Then you'll realize, oh, there's something very wrong inside me. Then intellect. What am I thinking of? Where are my thoughts? On petty issues, on unimportant, insignificant things? Or am I constantly thinking of the larger? Just that. Just observe. And as you develop this skill of observing, you will also develop objectivity. Means you won't get affected by what's happening. Next verse.
श्रेयान् द्रव्यमयाद्यज्ञात् ज्ञानयज्ञः परन्तप सर्वं कर्माखिलं पार्थ ज्ञाने परिसमाप्यते.
The sacrifice of knowledge is superior to the sacrifice of wealth, O Parantapa, scorcher of foes. All action in entirety, O Partha, son of Pritha, culminates in wisdom. See, look at the amount of emphasis on knowledge. Why does he talk about knowledge? Because ignorance is the root cause of all our problems, all our suffering. I guarantee you, any problem you have, just apply knowledge, it will disappear. Simply vanish. But you would rather suffer than gain knowledge. This is what I can't understand about human beings. This is what Krishna could not understand. Why do you prefer suffering to knowledge? You know why? Because gaining knowledge is little painful in the beginning. Like, why are there less people here today? Everyone is busy preparing for Dasara, enjoying Navratri, I don't know what. Anything that is enjoyable. So, here he is emphasizing sacrifice of knowledge is superior to sacrifice of wealth. And yet, wealth also people don't give. So where will you gain knowledge? Sacrifice of knowledge is a far cry. So take a look at the 4 yajnas he's been talking about. Dravya yajna, tapo yajna, yoga yajna, swadhyaya jnana yajna. First is wealth. When you give wealth, qualitatively, what are you giving when you give money? With money, what can you buy? Sense objects. You can't buy emotion, you can't buy love, you can't buy knowledge. Only sense objects, which is the lowest. Quantitatively, you're only giving objects. And with those objects, you enjoy only the present moment. When there is contact between the object and you, only then you can enjoy. Before you can't enjoy, after you can't enjoy. Penance. When you go and give your physical effort to someone, you work. Let's say your friend is moving house and you go and help her pack, shift to the new house, unpack, maybe cook a meal for her, whatever. You're putting in effort. So what are you giving? You're giving your body. Qualitatively. Quantitatively, you're giving objects plus body. Then yoga yajna means you're giving your love and giving knowledge. So what are you giving? Mind and intellect. Qualitatively. Quantitatively, you're giving body, mind, intellect plus objects. Body, because it's not that as you go up, you don't give the lower. You also give the lower. Then comes Swadhyaya Dhyana Yajna. Qualitatively, what are you giving? When you develop spiritually and you're interacting with people, what are you giving? Atman. And it's not that you're going and giving a lecture to people, just your normal everyday activity. Whatever it is that you're doing, you're transmitting Atman. It's so beautiful. All realized people, if you read their life story, it's about that. Sri Ramakrishna, he never left the temple premises. Where he lived in the temple, never left it. But one day he heard that Shudra, the person who cleans the bathrooms, he was not allowed to enter the temple. But he was a great devotee of Ramakrishna. And he heard that he was not allowed to come in and meet him. So he felt very bad. Now he couldn't change the custom. So that night, Ramakrishna went to his house and cleaned his bathroom as repentance for such a horrible custom that we have. And when the man woke up in the morning, he couldn't believe it, and he felt so bad that Sri Ramakrishna came and cleaned his bathroom. Now, what did he communicate in this? Just a simple act. He didn't tell anybody he was doing it. What was he communicating? That God lives in that man, whom we all consider tuch, untouchable. It is for these horrible customs that the whole of India is paying now. How could we do such a thing to human beings? So, every realized person, every person who not necessarily realized or spiritually evolved, through his actions, through his ordinary interactions with people, conveys what? Atman. But you must have the eyes to see it. Right? Others would have viewed Sri Ramakrishna's action as stupid. How can you do that? It's not allowed in society. Or when Swami Vivekananda, then he was just Narendra, he did not go and visit Sri Ramakrishna. He would be heartbroken. And when Narendra went after a few days, he would say, "Why didn't you come? I missed you." He would cry and feed him as if he was a baby. Feed him food. Now when you see all this, you say, what? Was he crazy? It's not that. His heart was overflowing with love and he didn't know how to express it. We don't understand because we don't feel, we never get to that state where we are feeling so intensely for anyone. And if you do, and you make the mistake of expressing it like this, the whole world thinks you're mad. What a tragedy. That's what it is. Untouchables? Yes. Even today, they are not allowed to take water from the same well as the upper caste. Oh, forget them. How do we treat our own people? Huh? How do we treat our servants? How do we treat our own, the lower employees? We should look there. We should look within. There's plenty of room for improvement there, right? Do you know how servants are treated in the United States? First of all, they're paid heavy salaries. So very few people can afford a full-time servant. Maximum they can afford somebody who comes to your house once a week, some once a month to clean. And then they're treated like guests. They're given a meal, they sit with the rest of the family, eat with the same fork and spoon and crockery, cutlery as us. There you do all that. You come back here and say, no, you are not to touch my crockery, you are not to eat from my plate. Is that not untouchability that we are practicing? Forget villages. So, you see, this giving is something that must be total. And then you feel the effects. Like in the poem Daffodils, Wordsworth's poem, it's about the entire spiritual path. I wandered lonely as a cloud. Cloud epitomizes the highest form of giving, because in giving, there is nothing left. When the cloud gives rain, what remains? Nothing. It has given of itself entirely. In the Ishavasya Upanishad, he says that Vayuranilam amrutamatedam bhasmantagum shariram, means he says, let my prana go back to where it was. That all these years in my lifetime, I have arrogated the prana to myself. Let it go back. What a thought. Let the body go back to the earth where it came from, because I have no right to keep it. Let it go. Because he's on the verge of realizing. He's already realized. Let the body go to bhasma. Let it go to ashes. Here, so it's not suicide. He says, I have no use for it anymore. I have reached my mission. Let it go back. What giving? So, that's what it is. And here we are, little bit we are not willing to give. So what must we do? Force yourself to give. Push yourself to give. Even when you don't feel like giving, give. And if somebody takes from you, you say, thank you for taking, take it. Then you don't feel, hey, somebody is taking advantage of me, somebody is being unfair to me. What does it matter? Like someone said, I think it was Shakespeare, he steals my purse, steals trash. Whoever steals from me, what is he stealing? What can he steal? Material things. That's trash. Let it go. There was a man here on Malabar Hill. One day his house got burgled. The most expensive carpets, paintings, everything. It was cleaned out completely. So the cops came, insurance, this, that. He was sitting there peacefully. And somebody came and asked him, how do you feel? He said, that which had to go has gone. Meaning, it had to go anyway sometime. It's gone. Now I'm at peace. I had no worries. Because as long as it was there, I had to look after the paintings, the carpets, this, that. There's tension. Now it's gone. What an attitude to take. So, evam jnatva vimokshase. Knowing this, you will be liberated. Knowing what? That all action in entirety culminates in wisdom. That relative liberation is where you're liberated from the entanglement and stupidity of life. You know what this entanglement and stupidity is? You take a look at an unmarried person, boy or girl. Only mission is somehow or the other I should get married. Oh, I'm 25 years old. What will happen to me next year? Nothing. You'll be 26. I'm still not married. Thank your stars, man. Enjoy your freedom. Why do you want to get imprisoned? You take a look at all the married people to see their faces. Does anyone look happy? I'm not saying don't get married. Like they say, marriage is like Delhi ka laddu. Khao to pachhtao, na khao to bhi pachhtao. So one way or the other you are going to pachhtao. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts. After you get married, enjoy your imprisonment. But understand that is what is going to happen to you. That is real objectivity. So understand. Otherwise, it's just stupidity that's going on. And you get attached to whatever it is that you're doing. You're single, you get attached. You're married, you get attached. You have children, you get attached. And that's not the end of it. You become grandparents, great grandparents, you are still attached. Next, 34.
तद्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्षन्ति ते ज्ञानम् ज्ञानिनस्तत्त्वदर्शिनः.
Know that by obeisance, by questioning, and by service, seva, the wise, the seers of truth will teach you the knowledge. So, in this one verse, he gives the qualifications of a student and a guru. Now, we as students, we sit there and say, oh, when will I get an enlightened master? What are we looking for? Some guy with a long grey beard, long hair, and sitting somewhere in the Himalayas. That is not an enlightened person. So, how do you get a guru? Become an ideal student. What are the qualifications of a student? 3. Pranipata, obeisance, surrender. Pariprashna, have an active intellect, question. And seva, service. So, first, pranipata is the physical thing, is where you do Sashtang Namaskar, where your head and heart is in alignment with the feet of the Guru. So, very often people say, oh, why should I touch his feet? You're not touching his feet. What are you doing? You are paying obeisance to the foundation on which he is standing, which is Atman. So, it doesn't matter who it is, fall at his feet. There was a Mali and a Swami, in that Swami's ashram, had a big ashram and this, that and the other. So that Mali went one day and touched the feet of the Guru, the Swami. The Swami turned around and touched the Mali's feet. And the Mali said, Swamiji, what are you doing? He said, I am paying obeisance to Atman. Because you are standing on Atman, you are Atman. You know that it's such a nice thought. Not just that, it instills humility in us. Because there is greatness in the Mali, there is something in the Mali that we can learn. And it's not that we are the greatest. So have that humility. It inculcates humility. As you go up the ladder, you see there are certain communities where it is instilled from childhood. Like, I marvel at the Marwadi community. First, they bow down to elders. That instills humility. As you go south, we lost it. In the south, nobody touches anybody's feet. Each guy thinks I'm the ultimate. So when you find a guru, take time to select. Use your intellect to see what is the way in which the person is functioning, what are his teachings, does it appeal to me? Because there are different types of people, Some are service oriented, some are devotional, some are intellectual, so that match should be there. Thereafter, there must be an alignment, surrender. Otherwise, there is no communication. If there is no, as a patient, when you go to a doctor, if you don't have that surrender means what? I believe that here is a person who can cure me. If you don't have that, It's impossible. You can't be a patient. You won't benefit. Similarly, a lawyer, you have a legal problem, or a chartered accountant, you can't say, I don't know whether this guy is going to mess up my account. Then there's nothing, there's no relationship. There is no condemnation. You're not judgmental. You cannot be, because you are in the area of ignorance. You don't know under what section you get exemption from income tax. You don't know. You don't know where you're exempt, where you're not exempt, where you have to pay, how much you have to pay. Similarly with a lawyer, you don't know the law. With the doctor, you don't know. Otherwise, you would treat yourself, right? So, surrender means an understanding that I don't know, and that here is a person who knows. Then your mind is calm. This doesn't mean you don't question. Very next quality is prashnena, question. You don't understand anything, you are free to question. The doctor says this is the prescription, you must ask. Why must I take an antibiotic? Why must I do this? Why should I do an MRI? Why should I do surgery? You are at full freedom to ask. And you must ask. It's not blind follow. Similarly, with a lawyer, he says, go appeal, you must know why you're appealing. Now, what prevents clear thinking is what you must worry about. Is desire, fanaticism in our thinking, and mental agitation. When you have these three, you can't see clearly. Even if the person is right, you got to cooperate with it. You take another scenario where the doctor is right, and the patient thinks, oh, he wants to make money, therefore I will not get my surgery done. The patient dies. That's the other scenario. Therefore, you must be careful. Same thing with a lawyer or a chartered accountant. You get into serious trouble if you don't listen to good advice. So that is your skill. That is where your clarity comes in. If you have clarity, you know exactly what is happening. And then, very important, seva. See, seva doesn't mean go write a check to the person. Seva means no guru worth the name. Who's talking? Who's talking here? Krishna. Krishna doesn't want any seva from Arjuna. There's nothing in the world that he wants from anybody, and much less Arjuna, who's in such dire straits. He has nothing to give. Yet he says seva. Why? Because we must always have this gratitude in our hearts, and therefore quick to offer our services. You jump to be of service to someone. And that is the very rare you find in a person. Whatever it is, in whichever way you can offer your service. Because the Guru has given you the most valuable thing, which is knowledge, with which our entire life has changed. How can you repay? There is a movie called To Serve with Love. It came in the early 70s, 73, 74. I don't know how many of you were alive then. But you can always trace back. You'll find it somewhere in YouTube. So it's about a teacher, Sidney Poitier, who is given a school that in the inner city of London, where the students are impossible to deal with. They come from broken homes, they come from poor backgrounds, they come from substance abuse, alcohol, all kinds of things. And they are all frustrated and angry and impossible to deal with. Here is a guy who goes, he loves them. He understands them. And within a year, he changes every one of them. So at the end of the year, they throw a party for him, a farewell. And this girl sings the song, says, "To serve with love." The song is titled "To Serve with Love." And she says, how can you thank someone who's taken you from crayons to perfumes? It isn't easy, but I'll try. And it's a tearjerker, that song, which is so true. How can you repay someone who has given you so much and that your whole life depends on it? Whatever you do will fall short. So that wanting to give, you may not be able to give. What can you do? What can you give? At best, you can give it to. So earlier, the Guru used to be in the cold Himalayan valleys. They used to take firewood for him. They used to take a blanket for him. And more importantly, they used to help in his mission of what? Spreading the word of Vedanta. And that we must remember even today, because we owe it. It's called Rishi Rin. We owe it to this long line of gurus to pass on the knowledge. Therefore, every one of us, at least here in the class, must do something. Now with Diwali around the corner, you go around buying expensive gifts for people. Buy a book, not one book. Buy as many as the gifts you give to people. Because in that, you are communicating precious knowledge. Give the Gita, give something.